We take pride in being a low-tax state, having no income tax, but you know, when I travel north, you end up with a lot of very inhospitable jurisdictions, except in New England, you got this one little outpost, the live free or die state, so thank you. And we're glad to be here in New Hampshire. We've been here all day, first time since I've been a declared candidate for president. And I think somebody like Biden, who's trying to do away with the first in the nation primary status for New Hampshire, he's doing that for his own interest. That's not the interest of our republic. And I think this is a tradition that's worked very well. So I'm happy to be participating in this, and I'm glad the Republicans are going to keep it on the calendar. Look, we know the country's going in the wrong direction. We can see it, we can feel it. We're not happy with an open border where millions of illegals are pouring in. We're not happy with an economy that's made it more difficult for working people just to make ends meet. We're not happy with an administration that's trying to kneecap our ability to produce our own energy. We are not happy with a weaponized bureaucracy that seems to go after people it doesn't like. If Hunter were a Republican, he would have been in jail by now, and we all know that's the case. We're not happy to see crime overwhelming American cities and hollowing out once vibrant localities. We are not happy when we see the woke ideology infecting so many institutions in our society. We are not happy that the federal government attempted to impose a biomedical security state on this country during COVID, and probably would have succeeded if it wasn't for states like Florida saying no. And we are still very much saddened, especially coming off this past weekend of remembrance, saddened by the fact that we lost 13 service members in Afghanistan due to the reckless incompetence of President Joe Biden. That is not good, and it is not acceptable. And so we see all these things. We also see a political elite in Washington, D.C. that looks out for its interest, not your interest. It's pursuing an agenda not that will represent us, it's pursuing their agenda to try to impose it on us. If you look right now, 5 of the 7 wealthiest counties in this country are suburbs of Washington, D.C. How could that possibly be? Washington, D.C. isn't producing anything except mountains of debt and a lot of hot air. It's that way because people who are politically connected in this country have an advantage. And you have an elite class, and you have everybody else out here working hard, and it's almost like when you work hard and do the right thing, the government wants to make it more difficult for you, and that is wrong. And look, it was mentioned when Jason's introduction, you know, I'm a blue-collar kid. My mother was a nurse. My father worked for the television rating company Nielsen. Back then, to get the ratings, you actually had to install a device on the family's TV sets and their cable boxes. And so that's what he did. His father was a steel worker in Pittsburgh. And so I was always taught, you're entitled to nothing. You have to work for everything. And so you better get working if you want to get ahead. And I just believed that in America, if you work hard and you make the most of your God-given talent, you are going to succeed, because that's what this country was founded on. So I started working minimum wage jobs when I was a teenager. My first job, full-time job, I had graduated high school, and most kids have fun over the summer before they go off to college or whatever. I went to work. I'm there at 6 a.m. working for an electrical company as an assistant to an electrician. And I actually learned something about government on that, because I showed up to work the first day and I got sent home. And I was like, I didn't even do anything, and you're already sending me home? They said, you know, we looked at your work boots and we couldn't determine whether or not they are OSHA approved. So you must go buy boots that are OSHA approved. And these were old boots, I think, that had been in the family. They were fine, they were safe. So I had to spend my first week's salary on buying new boots And so I thought to myself, I don't think it made me any safer, but it did make me a little bit poorer that this regulation was in effect. So it just shows you how government operates. But we worked, and we always believed that that would be something that would be very, very important. And I ended up putting myself in a position to be able to do things and talk about military and all this other stuff. But I would not be here today as the governor of the third largest state in this country, the 13th largest economy in the world if we were our separate country, and a candidate for president if I didn't believe that in America, hard work pays off. And if we lose that in this country, we are going to lose a great heritage. And so I look at the direction of our country, but I think this: American decline is not inevitable. American decline is a choice that we will make, particularly over these next 18 months. Success is attainable, and freedom is worth fighting for. And I'm running for president because I think we have it within our power to reverse the decline and restore this country to the level of greatness that we all deserve. There's a lot of things that are going to need to be done, and we have to recognize we got a lot of problems right now going on in our country. We need to restore a dose of sanity to our society. If you look at the nonsense that's gone on over the last many years, you wonder what is going on. Look at the fiscal and economic policies we've seen over these last few years. They're printing trillions of dollars. They're borrowing trillions of dollars. They're spending trillions upon trillions of dollars. Of course you're going to spark inflation. Of course you're going to end up sparking economic problems when you do that. And all I can tell you, they did this debt deal in Washington. Our nation was careening towards bankruptcy before that debt deal, and it is careening towards bankruptcy after that debt deal. It did not solve the problem. In fact, it's green lighting $4 trillion in new debt for the rest of Biden's administration. It's locking in COVID-era levels of spending, which are so much more inflated than what we should be spending. And even those 87,000 new IRS agents that Biden put in, that all Republicans have said they wanted to get rid of, it only reduces those by 2%. So this is not a deal that's going to get the job done. I can tell you in Florida, we run budget surpluses. We have a $1.2 trillion economy. We have a $1.2 trillion economy, which I said it'd be the 13th largest in the world if we were a separate country. But our debt with a $1.2 trillion economy is $17 billion. Compare that to the federal government. Our overall economy is something like $25 trillion. Our debt is $31+ trillion, bigger than the entire American economy by many, many trillions of dollars. That doesn't work. We've shown in Florida what can work. We also need to restore sanity by recognizing we can't have every major institution in American life be going on these ideological joyrides. Things like merit and achievement need to trump things like identity politics. You should not have to compete in the woke Olympics just to get a job or to get into school. We also have to restore a sense of normalcy to American communities. You cannot have a country that does not have a border. You cannot have a country if millions of people are pouring in illegally and imposing huge burdens on society and particularly on communities in Texas and in Arizona. You have to get that right. You also cannot have normalcy when the inmates are running the asylum in American cities, when prosecutors are refusing to prosecute crimes, when people are attacking police and they're releasing offenders with no cash bail. That doesn't work, and that needs to change if we want to restore that normalcy that people deserve. We also need to restore integrity to our institutions. So I was somebody who worked hard, got in a position I could have made a lot of money, but then, this was after September 11th, I made the decision to volunteer to serve in the U.S. Navy and serve in our military. And it was something that I didn't get anything for it in terms of paying for school or any of that, but it was something that I believed in. I felt that in a time of crisis for the country, people should step up. We don't have a draft, so you just do it. And even though I would have made a lot more money doing other things, the satisfaction you get wearing the cloth of your country, serving alongside fellow patriots, and pursuing a mission that is larger than yourself, well, that's a satisfaction that money just can't buy. And so I was proud to be able to do it. I'm thankful for all the veterans out there for their service through the years who've served in our conflicts when duty called. But I look at the military today, and they're pursuing political agendas inside the military. They are alienating people by imposing, which they did for a long time, unscientific COVID vax mandates. They are driving warriors away from serving in uniform. And look at the recruiting. It's abysmal. Even at the height of the Iraq War, when you knew if you signed up for the U.S. Marine Corps, you would be on the next flight from Parris Island after training to Fallujah, Iraq, people were still willing to join because they believed in the cause, they believed in our country. Now they have a tough time recruiting people because people don't want to join a woke military. They want to join a military that's focused on the core mission of why we have the military. We also have to restore integrity to our constitutional system. The Founding Fathers created 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial. They did not create a 4th branch of government, this administrative state that has grown up over many, many decades and accumulated much power that is not vested in them under the Constitution. Now, some of the most transformative policies that affect our economy and society don't even get voted on by the people's elected representatives. They get imposed through administrative rules and by bureaucrats who are nameless and faceless and who you as Americans will never have the opportunity to vote out of office. We need to return this government to its rightful owners, we the American people. We have to have our national affairs rooted in truth as the foundation of all that we do. It's not my truth, it's not your truth. There is a truth, there's a true north, and we got to make sure that that is what we're pursuing as a country. And common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue in this country. We need to tap into that and make sure what we're doing is something that passes that common sense test. And the bad news is there's a lot of work to do to get there. The good news is what we've done in Florida shows it can be done. We in Florida chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. We held the line during COVID when freedom itself hung in the balance. I was not going to allow our state to descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were crushed and their freedoms were curtailed. No, we protected people's jobs, we protected people's rights, we protected people's businesses, and we made sure the school children of Florida had a right to be in school in person 5 days a week. In short, we chose freedom over Fauciism, and we were right to do so. And the thing about being an executive is, yeah, you got to get the policy right. I mean, obviously, we see what's happened with Joe Biden, who can't seem to get anything right. So you got to be right on policy. You know, you got to have that right philosophical frame of mind. But being right on policy as an executive, whether it's a governor or president of the United States, it's necessary, but it is not sufficient to be a strong leader and to deliver big results. What the indispensable ingredient is leadership. And so during COVID, you know, I was at a position where we were charting a different course. We were bucking the establishment, we were bucking the bureaucracy, we were bucking the media, bucking the left, and even bucking some in our own party. And I was getting hammered every day, getting smeared, getting attacked. And I even had a lot of supporters that said, Governor, you are not long for this world politically the way you're going. You need to try to reverse course. I know you feel strongly about that you're right, but there's a political reality to this you got to recognize, and I don't think you're going to even be able to get reelected the way things are going. But you know, a leader does not put any short-term political calculation over what's in the best interest of the people that he represents. And so I resolved I am going to care more about preserving and protecting the jobs of the people I was elected to represent than I am worried about protecting my own political hide. And so however it works out, so be it. But I'm going to stand and I'm going to do what's right. And I'll take the incoming so that my folks didn't have to. And that's exactly what we did. And at the end of the day, leadership is not about entertainment. Leadership is not about virtue signaling. It's not about building a brand. It's ultimately about producing results for the people that you represent. And in Florida, we've done that. I mean, we are the fastest growing state in this country. We rank #1 for net in-migration and have every year since I've been governor. We just got ranked #1 for education by U.S. News and World Report. We're #1 for parental involvement in education. We're #1 for education freedom. Our crime rate sits at a 50-year low, and we have the second lowest tax and debt per capita in the entire United States. And so that didn't happen by accident. It happened because we've leaned in on issues. We've been an energetic governor, and we've gone on offense and not just sat back like a potted plant and waited for issues to come to us. Because as a leader, anytime you make a decision, no matter how popular, some people will like it and some people will not. And so some people get elected and they say, well, I will alienate fewer people if I just never make any decisions. And so they never want to wade into issues. They only make decisions when it absolutely hits their desk. And that's not the way you got to do it. You got to be forward, you got to lean in, and you got to get things done. So here's some of the things we've accomplished during my tenure as governor. We have prohibited the purchase of land in Florida by the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliates. No farmland, no land near critical infrastructure, nothing. We have signed legislation kneecapping ESG in the state of Florida. No ESG in the pension, no social credit scores, and no woke banking that discriminates against conservative Floridians. When Hurricane Ian hit Southwest Florida, does any of you have a place in Florida or Southwest Florida? Southwest? Where? Okay, great. Yeah, that didn't get it as bad as some of the others. But so you had Ian. It was almost a Category 5, and it came through. It did a lot of damage, but probably the most spectacular images the morning after was it knocked out the bridge going to Pine Island from the mainland, and it severed the causeway from the mainland going to Sanibel Island in 3 different places. And so those were not state bridges or state roads, and so it was a local issue. So the locals are telling the residents of those islands, hey, it's going to be 6 months before we get this up and running again. You better make arrangements. This just isn't going to work. And so the residents came to me. They said, Governor, you got to help us. And, you know, sometimes in my position, some elected officials would say, well, gee, if I get involved in this, then I'm going to get blamed if it doesn't work. So some of them wouldn't have even gotten involved. But I'm like, look, I'll get involved. I mean, I'm going to help you because we can't wait 6 months. It's unacceptable. So we took over the task. I got my guys together. I said, listen, no bureaucracy, no red tape, and no excuses. I want these bridges repaired, and I want the traffic to resume as soon as humanly possible. And we do not have 6 months. So we accepted the Pine Island rebuild. And instead of it taking 6 months, we rebuilt the bridge in 3 days. And then Sanibel Causeway, we accepted it, and that took another 2 weeks after that. And so, and I've mentioned that because, you know, those guys that did that were good in Florida. And I've told the President Biden, I'll send my Florida guys to the southern border to build a border wall. Let me know. I'll do it. We got to get that done, right? But it's just an example of there's always ways you can say you can't do something. And I think the job of a leader is to find a way to get it done. And that's exactly what we did with Ian. We've also been able to enact, as Jason mentioned, historic tax relief in Florida. You know, we don't have an income tax, and I think that's the way, you know, other states would be wise to follow our lead. It's much better. So we try to find ways, how do you provide tax relief? So we did $500 million in reduction in tolls for Florida commuters. We did no sales tax, permanently barred sales tax in Florida on all baby items. And so diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, clothes, all that is tax-free. That's going to save families a lot of money. And, you know, our kids now are 6, 5, and 3. When we became governor, my wife and I had a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old. We didn't even have our youngest yet. And when I signed the tax relief into law, I came home that day and my wife said, why didn't you do this in 2019? Well, it's because we didn't have Bidenflation in 2019, and people need relief now more than ever, so we had to come through for them. We've enacted universal school choice in Florida. Parents have a right to send their kids to the school of their choice, no questions asked. I've been able to appoint a total of 7 constitutionalist judges to the Florida Supreme Court. It had been the most liberal Supreme Court in the entire country when I became governor. It is now arguably the most conservative Supreme Court in the country, and we're better off for that. We have taken a page out of the playbook of both New Hampshire and Vermont by defending Second Amendment rights and enacting constitutional carry protections for Floridians. We've been steadfast in being tough on crime and have enacted policies to ensure that these repeat offenders are having to post bail and they're not let out with no bail, making sure fentanyl dealers are held accountable in really, really big ways. And we've even authorized the death penalty for pedophiles to hold them accountable for what they're doing to kids. We rejected outright at the outset the idea that you would ever defund police, and we passed legislation in Florida prohibiting local governments from defunding law enforcement. And instead of defunding law enforcement, Florida has enacted for 3 straight years $1,000 bonuses for every single police officer and firefighter in the entire state of Florida. And we're a big state. That's a lot of folks. We've also recognized the menace posed by left-wing prosecutors who get elected usually with big financial support from people like George Soros. They get elected on a platform of ignoring laws that they don't like, letting criminals go scot-free even when they commit very serious crimes. And what happens when they get into office and do that? Crime goes up, the community gets hollowed out, people even flee those jurisdictions. And so when we had one of those prosecutors in Florida that said he wasn't going to enforce laws in Florida he didn't like, I removed him from his post. He is gone. We've taken strong action against illegal immigration by banning sanctuary cities, cracking down on human smuggling, sending National Guard troops to help at the southern border, and even sending illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. We've passed legislation prohibiting the use of a central bank digital currency in the state of Florida. If you don't know what that is, they're trying to do that. We're not going to let it happen in Florida, and as president, we'll definitely nix it. But it'd be a huge violation of your financial privacy, and it gives the government a huge amount of power if that would ever come to pass. We've also been the first state in the country to eliminate so-called DEI from our public university system. You know, they say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but in reality, it's ideology that they're imposing on the student body and on the professors and even on the staff. The way it's actually practiced, DEI is better understood as discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no part in our public institutions. Now, if I were here 20 years ago from Florida, I probably would not have ever mentioned the way Florida conducts elections, because we had some rough ones 20, 25 years ago. But now we're a leader in election integrity, partially because we have banned ballot harvesting in Florida. We've banned Zuckerbucks in Florida. You have voter ID in person, but also if you vote absentee, you got to still show voter ID, and we're proud of that. And we can count 8, 9, 10 million votes by midnight on election night. Why does California take 3-4 weeks just to be able to count the votes? What is going on in that period when they're producing those results in a trickle-down basis? We've also enacted legislation saying that Florida is not going to recognize President Joe Biden's attempt to impose this lockdown treaty from the World Health Organization on Floridians. Not going to fly. And as Jason mentioned, we have enacted the strongest medical freedom protections anywhere in the United States. No vax passports, no vax mandates, no school COVID mandates, making sure that they can't do that. And also, we've banned gain-of-function research in the state of Florida. Very dangerous stuff that they're doing with that. We have taken a strong stand against opioids. As I mentioned, tough penalties. For example, if an opioid dealer, fentanyl dealer, puts that in candy and markets it to children, they get life in prison for doing that. But we also understand, yes, you got to crack down on supply. We need to shut the border down to really get it right. We know Biden's not going to do that. So clearly, we also need to look at the demand. We also need to look at treating people who may be addicted. And so my wife, who you'll hear from in a minute, she launched a program for Florida schools called Your Facts, Your Future. And the reality is, some of these kids, particularly these teenagers, they will do a drug which they shouldn't be doing, but it'll be one that people typically would not suffer a fatal consequence from. But if it's laced with fentanyl, then all of a sudden they could die. And some of them are dying in significant numbers. And so we've put the message out, it's not worth it to do any of this street stuff. Don't play Russian roulette with your own life. Assume that fentanyl is laced in everything that may be out there. And if you stay away from that stuff, you may be saving your own life. And so that's very important. And it's also important to recognize that if somebody does overdose and they go to the hospital, when you just discharge them back into society, they're going to end up relapsing unless they have support. That's just the reality. And so what we've created is a coordinated opioid response network. We call it the CORE network. It's an integrated response across 16, 17 different counties in Florida now. Someone goes in the hospital, overdoses, they get resuscitated. They then go in to have treatment options. They have options in the community. We're basically trying to help people cope and manage this addiction. It's not an easy thing to do, but since we've done that, the relapse rate for people that have gone in that program is less than 10%, and that's a huge, huge positive. Now, of all the things we've done, one of the things I'm most proud of is we've drawn a very clear line in the sand in Florida. The purpose of our school system is to educate our kids. It is not to indoctrinate our kids with ideology. And part of the reason I'm passionate about it is because I know how important it is as a governor for the state, but I also look at it through the eyes of a father of a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old. And my wife and I just believe that kids should be able to go to school, watch cartoons, just be kids without having some agenda shoved down their throats. That wasn't happening when I was growing up. Now parents got to worry about, could they even watch a cartoon without having some agenda at play? And so we take that very seriously, and we've done an awful lot to be able to support parents. And I will talk about that in 1 minute, but since I mentioned my wife, the First Lady of Florida, I want her to come up and say a few things. And so where is she? There she is. So give her a round of applause.
Well, how excited are you to make Ron DeSantis the next president of the United States, right? I mean, I'm excited to be in the live free or die state, and it's been honestly an honor and a privilege to be able to be around and to drive all over the state today. If you notice that my voice is a little hoarse, there's a couple of reasons why. One, this is our 4th stop today. We did 4 stops in Iowa the day before. However, that talking really pales into comparison to the day previous to that, when I had very long, in-depth conversations with our 3-year-old, Mamie, as to why she cannot color, true story, with a permanent marker on the dining room table. Or the walls, because I've come to the realization you can only move furniture in so many places before you run out of real estate, that you have to keep doing it. So we're very blessed to have the 6, 5, and 3-year-old that the governor mentioned a second ago, Mamie, our little one, who, by the way, runs the household. If anybody thinks it's the governor or myself, no, it's Mamie. It's the 3-year-old who's in charge. But she's the first baby born to a sitting governor in more than 50 years. And they're all the light of our life. They keep us very busy. They have a lot of energy, very humble. I oftentimes like it when after a long day, sometimes I like it, after a very long day of the governor being on the road, he'll sometimes, it's about 8:30, 9 o'clock, we're going into our bedtime routine, and wherever he's been in the state of Florida or New Hampshire or Iowa or wherever, South Carolina, he'll bring home some kind of a sweet treat. So moms and grandmoms, you know how this goes. We're in the middle of our bedtime routine, and here comes Dad with a plate of cookies, which then means we need to start the process all over again, which is wonderful. The governor a second ago was talking about all of the great things that Florida has done. And, and I'm so proud of everything that he has stood for and held the line. But no, here is why it matters. Because so often you hear of people who run for political office. They say they're going to do all these wonderful things. They go to places like Washington, D.C., and they end up going rogue. They turn into these listless vessels, bending in the wind, beholden to the polls and politics, never delivering on the accomplishments that they said that they would do when they were elected. I don't know why this is particularly the case when you get to places like Washington, D.C. It's truly a swamp. You say you're going to go do something and go and do it. What I love about what Ron has done and why I'm so proud of him is because if you go back and you look at his State of the State, you go back and look at his inaugural addresses, he lays out a vision. And he actually executes on that vision. He does what he says he's going to do, and he gets it done, and he wins. The other thing I love about him is he isn't afraid to take a few hits. If you haven't noticed, sometimes the media comes after him. Sometimes you turn on the TV and every 5 minutes it seems like they're attacking him. And I would say, listen, it would probably alarm me if they weren't attacking you, because I'd be wondering, are you not doing the right things? But you know what? Through all of the hits, through all the attacks from the corporate media and the left, he never changes. He never backs down. He never cowers. He never takes the path of least resistance. And this is particularly true when you saw during COVID. I mean, this played out across the world. I mean, you saw Florida was right in the limelight with everything. Every decision he made was scrutinized. But I remember sitting in the very beginning of this. By the way, we had a new baby. Mamie was born on March 26th of 2018, or 2022. Yeah, it's been a long day. See? And so that was right in the beginning. We had a new baby, but I remember sitting there with him, and he is reading all of the studies coming out of places like the United Kingdom and Spain and Israel, and not reading someone's interpretation of the studies, but reading the data himself and talking to people who had been blacklisted on places like Twitter, where you had Dr. Bhattacharya and Dr. Kaldorf and Gupta and all these Nobel laureates and analyzing it as it was coming in and then making the best decisions for the people of his state. And when you look at what happened during COVID, he defended and protected the rights, liberties, livelihoods, and happiness of the people that he was voted to represent. And he put their jobs ahead of his own. And how refreshing is that for an elected politician to do that? So at the end of the day, you want somebody to do what they say that they're going to do, that are going to take the hits on behalf of you, your freedoms, your liberties, and your happiness. Because what we need to do is protect and defend the idea of America. Because we want to give to our children, our 6, 5, and 3-year-old who are probably currently destroying the house, but that's okay. It's all right. As a matter of fact, I did another FaceTime with them just a minute ago. I did it last night. I did it again tonight. And they're eating popsicles on the sofa, which is fine. It's okay. We can get everything out with a sponge, just as long as they have the bowl, it's okay. But we're trying to protect their future, your children's future, your grandchildren's future. And I am so excited because I know when this guy gets into the White House, when he says he's going to do something, he's going to get it done. And we are going to show the world the best of America is yet to come. God bless you guys, and thank you.
Best First Lady in all 50 states, in my judgment. I'm just saying. So when we did our last governor campaign, the First Lady launched a Million Mamas movement, and her goal was to sign up 1 million moms throughout the state of Florida. Now, because it's Florida, we also included grandmas as well, but still, she was able to not only do 1 million, she exceeded it. She signed up 1.1 million mamas just in the state of Florida for the governor's election. She's going to be taking that nationally, and so we're going to have mamas for DeSantis in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and everywhere. So sign up. And we need to, because I think that the rights of parents really are paramount. They have a right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. They have a right to know what curriculum is being used in the schools. And we've enacted curriculum transparency legislation so that they're able to do and know whether the curriculum that they have is appropriate and whether it's the same with Florida standards. And so parents in Florida have been exercising that right, and they've actually, unfortunately, had to blow the whistle on inappropriate material in the schools. What's your name? Okay, I'll look to see what. Leave that with us.
5 years.
Thank you. All right, so then you have a situation where the parents are blowing the whistle on this, and they're finding pornographic books in schools in like 6th grade, and you're like, where is this coming from? And so obviously that doesn't sit well with Florida standards. It's not age appropriate, so they remove it. Now, what the media tries to say is, if you remove a pornographic book from a 6th grade classroom, that is a book ban. First of all, in Florida, you can buy whatever or use whatever you want as an adult, but when you're talking about what's in a classroom or what's in a school library, you by definition have to curate and make decisions. You may have one book about George Washington. There may be 50 others you could have in the book. You're not banning those 50 books because they're not in the school library. So it's a total fraud, and we refer to it as the book ban hoax. And so we did a press conference to be able to expose this. But before I said a word, before we had the parents come up, we just played a video that showed the books and the images that the parents were objecting to. The local news stations had to cut their feed because they said it was too graphic to put on the air. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? So we think that that's important. We also think it's important, and we've taken action to ensure ideology doesn't overtake our classrooms. We have eliminated critical race theory in our K through 12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other. Not with your tax dollars, we're not. But instead, what we're doing is placing a renewed emphasis on American civics, on teaching kids about the founding principles of our country, about our Constitution, about what it means to be an American, because no matter what path in life they take, they're all going to be citizens of a republic. And there's certain responsibilities that come with that. It's our responsibility to give them an adequate foundation so they're not just listless vessels out there, and they actually have an appreciation for the American experiment. And so we've leaned in on that, and that's going to be very good for Florida for many, many years to come. We also had to draw a very important line in the sand. Why we even have to go down this road on some of this stuff, to me, is sad. But we had to pass a parents' rights and education bill to say no gender ideology in the schools. When you're talking about a 2nd grade kid, don't teach the kid that they were born in the wrong body. That's inappropriate to do. And the parents in Florida were very happy when we did it. And this is not just like a Republican thing. There's Democrat parents, independents. They want the schools focused on academics and on the core mission of what the schools. They don't want the injection of these other things. So the parents were very happy. Now, the left was not happy. The media was not happy. And there happened to be one little company in Central Florida that wasn't happy that you may have heard of called Disney. And, you know, for all of recent Florida history, they basically called the shots when it came to policy. I mean, they effectively had a veto because if they were to weigh in, things just died. And a lot of people told me, oh, if they weigh in against this, watch out, you know, you're not going to be able to stop them. They're a freight train. Well, you know, I took an oath to support and defend the people of the state of Florida. I did not take an oath to subcontract out my leadership to a woke corporation based in Burbank, California. So we did what was right. We stood our ground, and we made sure we protected the kids of this state. And, you know, it's the type of thing. I've got some of these Republicans now that are going after me and actually siding with Disney. And look, I don't know why Disney's gone down this road. You know, when you have executives on these Zoom calls saying they want to jam the sexualization of the programming into these very young kids' stuff, that is not appropriate. That's not what parents want. I mean, obviously the company's struggling right now in a lot of different ways. And so when we see that, that's just something that we have to take a stand against. And so we did that. But the people that are criticizing us, what I just say to them is, we are going to stand for the protection of children. We are going to fight anybody that seeks to rob them of their innocence. And on those principles, there will not be any compromise. We will be firm in that. So Florida, I think, shows a couple things. One, it shows that it can be done. That you can lead boldly, you can lead with conviction, you can deliver big results, but importantly, you can also deliver big election results. And that's what we did. I got elected in 2018 by 32,000 votes out of more than 8 million votes cast. And people told me, hey, keep your head down. Florida's a swing state, evenly divided. Don't rock the boat because it could end up rocking against you and maybe you don't get reelected. And I understand why they said that, but I rejected that advice. I said I'm going to lead boldly and purposefully, and that's what we did. Well, fast forward 4 years later, November 2022, we don't win by 32,000 votes. We win by over 1.5 million votes. Massive landslide victory, the greatest in Republican Florida history in a governor's race. And, you know, yes, we did very well with Republicans, of course, but we won independent voters by 18%. We won 60+% of Hispanic voters. We took a county like Miami-Dade, which is the most urban county in Florida, 2.8 million people, a county that Hillary Clinton won by 30% in 2016. And we won it by double digits for me and other Republicans. And that's what you got to do. And when you're leading the ticket, it's not just about you, okay? You are part of a larger team effort. And so I worked and helped our legislative candidates, school board candidates, people running for the Congress. And so we were able to win supermajorities in the Florida legislature. We were able to add 4 additional Republican members to the congressional delegation. And we were even able to elect 29 new conservative school board members across the state of Florida. Those victories are going to have reverberations into the future. You want to create a bench so that your policies will live on when you're no longer there, and that's exactly what we've done. So we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish in Florida, and right now, for the first time since the Civil War era, there's not one single solitary Democrat elected to statewide office in the Sunshine State. That's what you call winning, and winning big. But the other reason Florida, I think, is instructive, and it mirrors what the First Lady said. Look, I don't go around just popping off and making idle promises. Like, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I am going to do it. I don't say it lightly. There are times when people ask me to promise something, and if I'm not sure I can deliver on it, you know, I don't go out there and just tell them what they want to hear. And so when we say we're going to do something, you know, you can take that to the bank. You can book it, that we will be doing it. So I pledge as president, you will see energy in the executive when I'm there. We're going to go on offense. We're going to take on the big issues head on. We are going to reverse Biden's disastrous economic policies that have made it so much more difficult for families to make ends meet. We're going to get the spending in this country under control and bring fiscal sanity to Washington. We are going to make sure our economy is focused not on the largest corporations, but on the small businesses that are the lifeblood of our communities from sea to shining sea. And we're also not going to allow the Chinese Communist Party to continue to eat our lunch. We need to make more things in this country, and we cannot be reliant on China for all these important goods and materials anymore, and we will take that on. You know, as a Republican, for my entire adult life, I've been hearing about this problem at the southern border. I've heard a lot of promises about taking care of it, ensuring border security for years and years and years. And what I can pledge you to this, when I'm president, we will be the one to finally bring this issue to a conclusion. We are going to shut the border down. We are going to stop the mass migration. We are going to build a border wall. And we are going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they have caused in these United States. We are going to usher in a reckoning about the disastrous policies that the federal government pursued during the COVID-19 pandemic. Fauciism was wrong. Fauciism was destructive. And we need to hold people accountable so that we can be sure this never happens again in the United States of America. We recognize that woke ideology represents a war on truth. So as president, we will wage a war on woke. We will fight the woke in the schools, we will fight the woke in the corporations, and we will fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will leave woke ideology in the dustbin of history once and for all. On day one, we will take action to remove the politics from our military and restore the sense of purpose that we all want to see. We need a strong military. We need to have good recruiting, and we need to be able to deter threats to this country, such as those posed by the Chinese Communist Party. They are on the move. They are expanding their military. They have significant ambitions. I'm very confident that a strong America will deter China. And President Reagan understood you get peace through being strong. And so we need to go about the business of strengthening our military, not just in terms of the ability to project power, but morale and making sure we have good order and discipline. And we will do that as Commander-in-Chief. We need to finally reconstitutionalize this government. We need to bring the administrative state to heel once and for all. We cannot have a situation where massive amounts of power have been lodged in agencies that are not constitutionally accountable in the way the Founding Fathers envisioned. And yet, that's exactly what we have now. When you talk about weaponized government is exactly what the Founding Fathers would have predicted if they thought that there would be no restraints on the growth of these agencies. All it is a reflection on human nature. They knew that power left unchecked would be abused, and so it's our responsibility to rein that in and bring it to heel. But here's the thing. This is not something you can just flip a switch on. Anyone that tells you, oh, I'll take care of it, it'll be done in 1 day or 6 months, they're selling you a bill of goods. This is a problem that has accumulated over many, many decades. And it's going to take a president that has discipline. It's going to take a president that has determination, and it's going to take a president that has a clear strategy for how you tame this big Leviathan. We will have that strategy. We will get to work on day one. And look, with me, and I don't know if this is true with other candidates, but for me, you're going to have a new FBI director on day one, which we know we need. So it's something that is going to require daily effort over a really extended period of time. No one's going to get it done in a day. No one's going to get it done in 6 months. But we will, as a two-term president, be able to get this done. And it is going to be a very, very high priority for our administration. Part of what goes into that is understanding you've got to have a leader. Look, the president, governor, whatever executive, yes, you make the decisions, you set out the vision, and ultimately that's indispensable to the cause, but you cannot do it alone. And you have to have the humility to understand you need to have personnel surrounding you and serving in the administration that share the vision, that believe in the cause, and they're going to put the mission ahead of their own personal interests. And if you do that, you're going to have an ability to make a difference. You can't just recycle everybody from inside of Washington, D.C. You got to bring people outside and other parts of the country, and we'll be calling on people. We'll be calling on people to serve to be able to do this. But I think one thing you know from me is you can look at my track record when it comes to picking personnel. I mean, during COVID, Dr. Fauci was one way that you could do it. I hired somebody named Dr. Joseph Ladapo. I brought him in from UCLA. If you know him, you're clapping. If you don't know him, look him up. But basically, he was an anti-Fauci. He didn't follow the narrative. He followed the data. He didn't care about what the media said. He wanted to pursue what was right. And he's been willing to stand up, take a lot of arrows, and get the job done. And I told him, I said, listen, you're going to get attacked. When you depart from the narrative, they go after you because they don't want the truth to come out. And so they went after him. And after a while, I started to run into him, and I'd say, look, I haven't been following exactly what you've been doing in the last week or two, but I see the media is attacking you a lot, so you must be doing the good stuff and doing the right thing, so keep it up. So you got to have people with that mindset to know that, this Leviathan wasn't created overnight. There's a lot of people that have a vested interest in keeping the administrative state this powerful, and when you go out to try to defang it, they're going to come after you. So if you have someone serving as Attorney General, that's somebody that needs backbone. That's somebody that needs to be willing to stand in the fire, because the fire is coming the minute you start to issue and institute reforms. I'm going to call on people around the country to answer a call of service. Pick up your family for 2, 4, 6, 8 years. Come to Washington, D.C., because really the future of constitutional government depends on it. This bureaucracy has been imposing its will on us for far too long. It's about time we impose our will on it. And we'll be doing so much more on so many other issues, and we'll be happy to have those discussions with folks in New Hampshire and across the country over the ensuing weeks and months. But here's the thing. None of this stuff we talk about is going to matter one bit if you don't win. There is no substitute for victory. We have to dispense with this culture of losing that's enveloped our parties in recent years. I look at this debt deal, and I wonder, we should have 55 Republican senators instead of only 49 Republican senators. A lot of those were winnable races. A lot of those were flubbed. And so maybe the deal would have been good if we had 55 Republican senators, but we don't. We have 49. So there's not going to be any mulligans on this one in the 2024 election. We either get it right or we suffer the consequences. And make no mistake, the Democrats are playing for keeps. If they win and sweep the 2024 election, they are going to try to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. They are going to try to eliminate the Electoral College. They are going to try to make Washington, D.C. a state. And they are going to try to eliminate voter ID in every jurisdiction in this country and mandate that all states allow ballot harvesting during elections. Now, that is not an agenda that is speaking to the needs of the typical American family. They're worried about food prices and gas and crime and education. It's an agenda where they're trying to render people that don't agree with them to be second-class citizens, to lock you out of having meaningful voice in your government's affairs. And so the stakes are high. And President Reagan used to say freedom's one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. And I used to think, yeah, it may be a little bit of hyperbole because, we're Americans. Isn't freedom just in our DNA? But if you've lived through the last 4 or 5 years in this country, we've seen firsthand how fragile freedom really is. It is not our birthright. It's something that we have to fight for. Our founding fathers understood this. When they went to Independence Hall in Philadelphia to frame our Constitution in 1787, they came armed with having studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind because they wanted to draw lessons from those experiments that they could apply here in America. And what they figured out was there was really only one thing that all of those republics had in common, and it was this. Every single one of them had failed. And so they understood it fell to the United States of America to determine, can people really govern themselves? Can you have a society based on the idea our rights are endowed by God, not by the government, that we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men, or was mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they understood that it would be the United States of America that would ultimately answer that question. But they knew they were not finally answering that question just because they crafted a constitution. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of the convention, he was approached and he was asked, "Dr. Franklin, what did you give us, a republic or a monarchy?" He said, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. You can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. You can have the best Constitution in the world. They do not run on autopilot. They require citizens in each generation to answer the call and to do what it takes to preserve the cause of freedom." And so we are called upon to take action over these next 18 months. We have it within our power to reverse the decline of this nation. We're called upon to carry the torch of what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. We're called upon to stand firm for the truth, and we're called upon to be resolute in defense of the enduring principles that have made America unique as a country. And my pledge to you is this. If you support me for president and I'm the Republican nominee, then you can set your clock to January 20th, 2025 at high noon, because on the west side of the Capitol, I will have this left hand on the Bible, I will have this right hand in the air, and I will be taking that oath of office as the 47th president of these United States. I will get it done. No excuses. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. God bless you. God bless the live free or die state, and God bless the United States of America.
A Russian man claiming to hold top-level secrets about Russian advanced bombers has just turned up at the U.S. southern border, seeking asylum. The man claims to have been an engineer at a production facility over in the city of Kazan, and he says that he possesses top-secret information about the White Swan Tu-160, which is the most advanced bomber in the Russian arsenal. U.S. border officials, they interviewed the man, and they determined that his story was in fact credible and eventually passed him off to the FBI, who are still in the process of interrogating him right now. However, analysts have pointed out that the fact that the story was even leaked to the public is an indication that perhaps the American government is encouraging other Russians who also hold top-level secrets to also escape to America. And if you thought that was interesting, well then you should click on that button below this video and check out Epic TV, one of the best no-censorship video platforms on the internet.